Hello, everybody. Welcome to Writers Drinking Whiskey, your spooky literary happy hour this month. I'm your host, William R. Hincy, and joining me today, I got a special Halloween episode for everyone. We got author, all-around great guy. He looks awesome in a hat. Mike Kozlowski. I blew it. See, I said it beforehand. 3 syllables got me. Mike Kozlowski.
Kozlowski, yes.
I did it. I just needed to slow down. Like my old drama teacher said, just slow down.
The ski is very intimidating. It's intimidating. I should have hit off screen and been like, boo, because it's a Halloween thing.
I thought about just having some silly mask on. I'm like, I just can't do it. That's too ridiculous. Next year's Halloween show, this year we gotta keep this outstanding.
Yeah, professional, high standards. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So let me give you the brief introduction here, and then you jump in with anything I miss. But so you've written a range of things, some short horror. I think we have the short horror and suspense collection, Some Days Suck Worse.
Yep.
The psychological suspense novella, Above the Clouds. And then you have the post-apocalyptic John Angel horror novels. So Angel of Death and Fallen Angel. And then today, the most recent one, which I forget if it's coming out or it'll be out around the time of the show.
Came out last week. 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 17th. Okay.
17th.
So it is out for everyone watching this. You're good to go. It'll be there. And we'll see if I can get it without a glare. We have, and now I can't even read it. American Ghost Stories, True Tales from All 50 States.
Such a great cover, too. That guy did such a cool job on it.
It is a really cool cover. I don't know if I did it justice. I'll pop on an actual image if you have one that looks.
Well, they should just go buy it and see it in person. It's really better in person. You should just buy it.
That's you make a good point. A fair point. So, guys, you're on your own. So we have that. Anything else you'd like to mention?
I did. We'll probably get to it. The other thing I wrote. I almost said that wrong. Was a travel memoir. Actually, was kind of the thing that got me into writing. I went to Australia, lived there for a year, and that's actually available on my website. There's a couple other little unpublished short stories and things that you can get on my website as well. So.
Awesome, and we'll link that up. And the one thing I failed to mention, but I was very happy about, I think I read it in the coat jacket, was that you also are in a cover band.
I am in a cover band, and I do original music too. Kind of more recently.
Cool.
The band is called Savage Bunnies.
Savage Bunnies?
Yep.
Is that at all inspired by Monty Python?
Absolutely. And I just like the kind of juxtaposition, right? A savage bunny, but
sure. Right.
But yeah, we're all just middle-aged guys get out. It's a lot like the Blues Brothers. By the time we're done playing, we probably owe more to the bar than we're getting paid. But it's a good time. So.
Very good. That sounds like a great time. Okay, so to matters of church and state, the most important question I ask all episode long: what are we drinking?
All right, so we're gonna have a Michigan Manhattan.
Oh, very cool.
Yes. So that's I don't know if you want the ingredients, if you want to do the drink now. We're ready to mix it up.
We can do the drink now. All right,
do the drink now. I happen to have my own personal bartender because I'm kind of a big deal. But actually, it's just that my girlfriend's a teacher, so she has a second job. So, which bartender. So she was going to be here to make this in person, but she is at that second job. So I'm going to play her video here that she did for us. I'm going to kill a little bit of lighting to make it a little better here. So I think this is what a key grip does. I think I learned that the other day. They adjust the lighting.
Oh, very good.
And a best boy helps the key grip. All right. And then while we're doing that, I am set up and I will also demonstrate how to make it back here. Mm-hmm. So hopefully the sound's good. And here we go.
Hi, I'm Janae from mahalo.com, and tonight we're fixing a stiff one.
Janae!
Just kidding. I'm Christen from Detroit, and tonight we're fixing a Michigan Manhattan. So we are going to start with 1 ounce of Long Road Michigan cherry liqueur.
Oh, wait, cherry liqueur. That's this one.
We're using Woodford. You can use whatever bourbon you prefer. 2 ounces of that.
Woodford. Got that. And 2 ounces.
And then a couple dashes of cherry bitters.
Bitters.
Even more than a couple.
I'm losing track. I don't know about. Probably a lot. That might have a lot. And ice.
Stir it.
Stir it.
Mix it up,
What
chill
is
it
this?
down a little bit.
That's frightening. More ice? Lemon?
Strain it into our rocks glass.
Wait, rocks glass.
Or a highball if you prefer.
Okay. It's fine. Lemon. Just put the lemon in. And more ice. And now cherry.
More ice.
Probably a lot of those.
Garnishing with some Michigan Peninsula fancy
Oh,
cherries.
I probably put too many in. That's okay. This should be fine. Then mix it. More mixing. Okay.
And
If my glass is over here, I put it in the
a
wrong
little bit
spot.
of
I'll just
lemon.
pour it out and sort it.
You're going to express over the drink.
I think I got it. And
Hit
wow,
the edges.
that turned out amazing. I can't believe how great that was. Jeez.
yeah,
Wow. That's excellent.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
Just like she did it.
Yeah, I know. I didn't feel like I was doing it right at all, but it worked out really good.
I'm excited about that. I love old fashions and Manhattans, so I will be trying that one out myself. I hope I do it as well as you just performed it. So.
You might probably pay more attention to her than me. I'm at a guess, but I mean, it worked. But
Right. And for our audience, I'll post the actual video at the end of this. So if you want to hang on, or there'll be little chapters, you go on if you want to see the actual video and get the insight. And because you had told me you were going to do that super fun thing with the I didn't actually realize it was a Manhattan, because the video quality when you texted it to me was because I think you have an iPhone and then I have an Android, so it all comes out like garbly gooky. And so I was like, okay, I want to see it later. It's cool, but now that I know it's a Manhattan, I'm super excited. I'm just gonna have it is. I like to do it easy when other people make fun drinks, so I'm gonna have mystery whiskey. I don't know if it goes up the decanter. It's a little skull guy. I think he's facing there now. I don't know how well he sees. But what I do is I like to get these decanters and pour whiskey in them. And then I think I'm going to remember what's in that decanter. And I never do. And it's like months later, I'm like, what's even in this? And so I have a mystery whiskey night. So
how many different decanters do you have?
I have 4. 4 running and operational ones right now. I got this guy here. They're actually all right here. I can show them. These ones are actually empty because we had a mystery whiskey night the other Saturday. This one's actually from, I just don't know if I can get it to show decently. It's the Wallace Monument in Scotland. Okay. My son, as I've mentioned on the show before, but the first time probably for you and probably half the people watching, my son is the 8th William in a row. We all have different middle names though.
Okay.
So that's why my writing name's William R. Hincy, because that's the only thing different between me and all the other ones is that R and letters after.
That's actually why I use the A. You wouldn't think there'd be that many Michael Kozlowski's writing things, but there's at least a couple others. So
well, there you go. Yeah. And so my son, when we were going to do his middle name, I tried to get my wife to let me name him William Danger Hincy, so that he could be the one
Danger
kid
is
to say
name.
Exactly. And she hated the idea, and so I was like, oh, well, what about William Wallace? And she's like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. And then after she agreed to it, she realized that she made a terrible mistake. And that was the blue-faced guy from the movie I like. So he's William Wallace. We went to the Wallace Monument. We were in Scotland. I guess I forget how many years. It was pre-COVID. So, the time is warped with that.
Oh, yeah. Nothing makes sense anymore. Realities, multiverses. I don't know what's going on. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one, and this one probably equally will not show up well, but it's my call sign is for William Hincy. It's Whiskey Hotel. Nice. So we have the Whiskey Hotel, and the other one's a little more planned. I think it was given to me as a gift by someone at some point in my life.
I feel like they should all be full with different whiskeys all the time, so that it's more of a mystery. What's going on.
Right. You've shamed me because they should. I'm actually. I thought I'd have a chance to refill them, and I just haven't, So I'm just gonna have a glass. Oh, and there's a little skull on the bottom of this glass too. I don't know if anyone's gonna see it, but cheers to you and everyone watching. And anyone watching for the first time, the rule on the show is you drink when you see us drinking. So anytime one of us has something drinking, drink along, and it makes the show a lot more palatable.
I'm just going to keep it in my hand all day. By the end, they'll be so messed up that they'll buy anything.
Right. So what I do like to start with for everyone going, I think it's a nice introduction to the authors, is maybe you could tell us a little just about your kind of journey to becoming a writer. I know you mentioned
Sure.
You started with the memoir, but maybe you can take us through that to the present day.
Yeah, I'll take you a little farther back, but it'll be brief. So I was a fine art graphic design major in college. Fell into engineering. Sort of, it's not hard to do when you live in Detroit, and you have two brothers that are tradesmen. Got married young. Was making good money as a trades guy, so I kind of got away from the arts and whatever, and just went on life, married, whatever. That kind of led into engineering, which led into an opportunity to go to Australia. So packed up the family. We lived over there for a year, worked over there, and I had traveled with my job already, like to Korea and some other foreign countries, but I'm always very conscientious of how I present myself in another country, because I hate that, dirty American, sloppy American, sort of attitude. And I see it all the time. Like we absolutely are like that, or most of us, right?
Yeah.
So I try really hard not to be. So I'm always buying books about the culture and the history and all that stuff, So moving to Australia, that, was a whole nother level of, how do taxes work and how does this work and how does that work? So as I'm going, I'm like, I got a stack of like 10 books. Why isn't there just a book that tells me how to move to Australia? So I was like, I'm just going to write the damn book.
Right.
So
very good.
Literally was that thing. So just kind of chronicled the journey from, having garage sales to get rid of shit before we left to, getting our visas the right way and going to find a house. And then, just daily stuff, our first encounter with a spider, whatever. And then I would tack on, like I'd talk about that encounter with the spider and then go into sort of the different, deadly critters that are in Australia or whatever. I'd talk about a trip down to the bay and talk about, discovery and stuff like that. So had a blast doing it. It was so much fun, and it was kind of that year-long process, and then I finished it up when I got home and polished it. And surprisingly, an expat site picked it up right away, and they were selling it online. And, a few articles were in different places, excerpts and things like that. So I was like, man, that was great. I want to write some more stuff. But I wasn't moving anywhere else, so what am I going to write?
Right.
So they say write what you know, which I don't really buy that bit, because that's kind of boring, right? Especially if it's a fiction writer, but write what you love, I'll buy that. So since I was 11, my mom bought me my first horror book, which was Stephen King's Pet Sematary, which most people in my generation, Gen X, that's probably how they were introduced to horror, like reading a Stephen King book way too young. So, and Pet Sematary was the worst one probably. And I'm absolutely certain my mom bought it for me because it had a cat on it. And she knew I kind of liked scary stuff and I liked cats. So she's like, look, there's a cat on the cover. No idea what it was about. Kids getting thrown up by trucks.
I think so. But that's moms in the 80s, right?
Exactly.
Of course this is fine,
Yeah, I probably had read like one of her Dean Koontz books or something, before that, and went, oh, that was not bad, and that was down the trail we went. So and then I became a lifelong Stephen King fan. I got up here above me a whole collection of books, like a lot of us do, every hardcover, all that whole thing. So I said, okay, I'll write horror, and I went that route, and I ended up writing a little psychological horror bit. You mentioned it, the Above the Clouds novella, which is included in the collection, and is right here. And that also got picked up quickly and got published, and I made a few bucks, and I felt like I was doing something. So kept writing short stories that led to the collection. That led to, okay, let's try something bigger. I wrote a terrible novel, and I literally stuck it in a trunk, which is back there somewhere, where all my drafts go. And that may come out someday. My mom loved it. She thought it was great, but
right.
She also bought me the book. My mom's not the best judge, So anyway, so that one went away, and I wrote another one, which was the Angel of Death, turned into the Angel of Death series, that actually came out in many forms. It came out it was working as a novel, fell into a relationship with a guy here that I knew, actually met on a bowling league that was an artist. We were talking Walking Dead or something. And we ended up actually making a little comic, a little beta comic of the thing.
Cool.
Got Jim Stevenson was the artist, and we find a good page. He did just like some great stuff, really cool. I have these on my website as well, but I'm just gonna keep plugging myself the whole time. Anyway, so that didn't come to fruition. He was a little bit younger, had a young family, and just life happens. But as it was a comic, it forced me to write ahead of him. Enough issues because you're writing a novel, you can go backwards, right? You can go back and change whatever you want. It's just your stuff. If he's drawn, 4 comics already, and I go, oh wait, I'm going to change it. Doesn't work. So,
I want to edit this character here.
Yeah, we're gonna make him, a whole different guy. We're just gonna make him female instead. But whatever. So
exactly right. Go redo all the art.
So despite the comic not happening, I all of a sudden had the whole layout for the novel, or at least what became the first 2 issues or volumes, I guess I'll say. And it did come out first as a novel of its own, one book. Had some issues with that publisher. Another publisher was interested, but they liked doing the smaller volumes, so we broke it into a two-part piece, and I'm sort of working on the 3rd and 4th now, which will probably finish the series. And then I ran into Roger at Visible Ink Press, who mailed you that wonderful book of American Ghost Stories, and we were talking about some other books, some other fiction stuff. Not really his gig. They're more, this kind of ghost stories and paranormal and reference books and that sort of thing. So in the course of that, I told him a story about a local ghost story that I was working on a novel for. It's a Minnie Quay story, which is included in the book, and actually will be what I'll read later, at least a portion of it. And I was just telling him the story, really. And he says, you think you can tell like 50 more of those? Like, I don't know, I guess. And he's like, well, you did a really good job. So why don't you write a book like that? And I was like, all right, that sounds great. So there I went. And now I'm, it was really a cool experience. It got me, I'm a skeptic. I'll put that out front really quick. But kind of the John Cusack in the 1408 movie, if you saw that, I'd be that guy. Hopefully I don't run into some crazy hotel room that, makes me insane. But it was a lot of fun researching it. I visited some of the places, did some investigations, and it's, even though I haven't found anything that convinced me yet, it was just a lot of fun. So I think we're going to do some more of them. So, and it's also kind of fun to learn, I'm kind of on the journey with the reader, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing either.
Right. Sure. It's funny you say that because there is the bit, like I was talking with someone on one of these shows about it being like everything I write, I think of it like as a journey. Maybe exploration sometimes like probably kind of varies, but there is a bit of like, I don't know where we're going as I'm writing it either, and so
even in the fiction
kind
stuff,
of finding out with you,
even in the fiction stuff, it surprises me. And I think, something in the subconscious, maybe of, the creative types, I don't know, whatever, but I'll be writing something and, 4 chapters later, I go, oh, that thing I wrote there was, oh my God, that was amazing foreshadowing for this thing I didn't even know was coming,
Right.
Or, it surprises me, or I, just it takes some turn that just feels right at that moment. And it's, it's why I don't write a lot of drafts, though. I do usually 2 drafts. So I do one, and it surprises me and I love it. And it's, like you said, it's the journey with the reader. And then the second one's, the painful editing and polishing and whatever. I do a lot of that while I'm writing, though. I usually go back over what I wrote, previously and before I kind of ramp up for the day's word count. But it just, by the time I get to, the 3rd, 4th draft, I kind of just hate the story. I'm tired of it, So like, that's as good as it's going to get, So I'm glad that my girlfriend, who I mentioned earlier as a teacher, is an English teacher. So it's an excellent source. She receives my first reader and, corrects all my bad grammar and misspellings. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point, though. Sometimes people, I think you can certainly overwrite.
Yeah.
Right. I've found myself, especially with some of my short stories, that I have completely rewritten short stories from like almost novella length down to like 1,500 words. Right. My editor, who's been on the show, is like, it's like a distillation. Like, it's not, you didn't edit, you distilled that down. Like,
right. But you got rid of all the junk, and I'm usually the opposite way. Depends on how the mood I'm in. Right. Usually, I'm not verbose enough. I know that's surprising as much as I'm blathering on, but usually,
Right.
I'm very linear.
I would have never told.
Yes, it's a very linear storytelling. So then I usually have to go back and kind of massage it, add in some colors, that kind of thing. Unless I'm high when I'm writing, which is usually what I am now. So then I'm very verbose. Then it becomes the distillation process. And my girlfriend can always tell. She's like, "How baked were you when you wrote this?"
Because this is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I guess that's my new process.
And so I know you mentioned that you're a skeptic with it. So, and let me preface it a little bit, because then people like ask me this all the time. Like I'll get, like, we went to a Bigfoot conference. I may have a fun Bigfoot guest for one of these shows. He agreed to come on. We'll see how it goes. So I won't mention names yet, but as people always go, do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in UFOs? Right. Whatever it is, right? It's like belief. And I've always, well, not always, but the last 10-ish years of my life, one of my values, like, that I try to go to, I'm not always perfect with this, is I really strive for intellectual modesty. So whatever you tell me, instead of me trying to dismiss it or anything, I try to take it in and like think about it, genuinely. I'm not always perfect, right? Sometimes people are like flat earth, and I'm like, okay, I can't even think about this one. Like, we're hitting a wall here.
Yeah. You have your limits.
There's limits to it. But when I think about, like, if you want to bucket it all in that paranormal, bucket, just to lump it all together, to me, like, what we know about the world is so tiny. Like, what we know about the universe is so tiny. And that means whatever I know is infinitesimal, like insignificant, like whatever it is. I might know this guy with his bar that's drinking all the time and writing fiction, right? And so I always look at, like, all of these things there might be questions, there might be preludes to just that world we just don't understand, like the part of our existence and phenomenon that we just don't understand yet. So, and
I, as a skeptic, I say I'm a skeptic. That doesn't mean I'm dismissive either. Like, I would never dismiss anybody's experience. It's your experience. I don't know what happened, and I've had weird shit happen. I just don't think it was ghosts, or whatever.
Right, sure.
But I do believe in an energy. The ghosts don't really jive with what's become my view of the afterlife or religion or whatever. It just doesn't. I don't believe in angels and spirits and all that sort of thing. So ghosts then don't really make sense. But I do believe in energy. So like a residual haunting kind of thing. I could see that. Some energy imprint or whatever. Or maybe there's a multiverse and there's overlaps and whatever happening. There certainly could be a sensible explanation for it, or a scientific explanation, or there could be fucking ghosts. I don't know. Right,
I know.
Like, I'm not saying I know.
Right. It could be all of the above, right? I mean, look at it. We love to, like, even with like UFOs, which is like more and more interesting actually by the day as the government, people come out and they're like, this happened, And actually,
I'm much more likely to believe in UFOs or even a Bigfoot than I am ghosts, I think.
Sure. Well, and the UFOs are always interesting because whenever I ask people on the show, but I like to ask, have you ever like witnessed anything like inexplicable? And almost every single person has a UFO story.
Oh, really?
Well, I think I saw a UFO once.
Story. I have ghost stories. I have I mean, I can remember as a kid, we used to, I thought I saw like a floating orb go down our street, that we called the Calhoun Ghost for the next 20 years, but, but, I don't know. And I thought that house on the corner was haunted, that was abandoned, but, I was also 6. So,
right.
But I've had weird stuff happen that I've had, when I was probably 16, 17, probably. Hanging out with other buddies, somebody had gotten this phone number, and it wasn't like a psychic number, like not an 800, 1980s number, but it was somebody's phone number.
It was that Madam Cleo, I think was the big one, right? Cleo. Madam Cleo.
Yes. Right on with the Lee press-on nail commercials, and followed by curling, I think, on Channel 9.
Yeah.
But they had gotten this phone number, And supposedly, the story was like, oh, yeah, Colin, it's this woman, she answers and she's psychic, but but she's like quadriplegic, and this is a whole big thing like around it, and I'm like, how does she answer the phone? It's like in the '80s, you didn't have like Bluetooth,
Right.
So, like, all right, whatever. But we dismissed that part. But you call, we did call, and it was over like one summer, it probably like was happening, Then we'd call like every weekend, we'd get together and we're, getting somebody to buy us beer or whatever, getting all drunk and calling this psychic. And there was some weird shit she said where she's like, but it was very, in hindsight, more like a mentalist sort of thing, right? Like she,
sure.
or like a horoscope, like they look back on and go, well, that was pretty broad, like something about wings in the living room. I don't know. And like somebody found like, look, the Steve Miller record. Oh my God.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. I wonder what she was doing though. Even if she was just a mentalist, why is she just taking these random drunk calls?
Right. It was probably like one of the guys' like girlfriends or something, and they were just
right.
I should go back and I don't talk to those guys much, but I should go investigate that.
So I know you had mentioned a little bit about it, but what compelled you to write the American Ghost Stories?
So having told that story, and Roger Jan at Visible Press, my publisher, I said, well, think about it, and we were actually at a bar drinking, so very similar situation. And I went away, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm a fiction writer, I'm not really a ghost story writer. I don't go on ghost hunts, blah, blah, blah. I do have some friends that do that, are really into it, and actually one friend that's writing a book. But, the more I thought about it, the more I started kind of researching and planning it, because we didn't really say it was going to be every, 50 states or whatever. But, that was kind of, as I started going, I'm like, well, why don't I do one from each state so it's diverse and everybody, whatever. Then I started playing with the idea and doing a little research. I'm like, man, this is kind of fun. And I think the research, it's a weird, I don't know, I'm weird probably. I was a good student, I was I was a good writer, but I wasn't like I was good in English. I won some, do you remember the Daughters of American Revolution essay contests they used to have?
I think I do remember that.
I won one of those. I have a dictionary somewhere that they gave.
Oh, very good.
But engraved, and it's very nice. But anyway, the research part I really enjoyed. I was, man, this part's really fun. Like just digging down in the book. I know you haven't had a chance to read it, but kind of how I tried to do each story was I give, kind of the if I can, like a ghost story or a retelling of something that happened to somebody, and then some other examples, and then the history of why that place is haunted. Is it who died, what happened, what's the whatever. And then when it was places I could visit, then I'll give my experience as well, which there's a handful of those, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sure.
I'd kind of like to do a book now that I could visit every place.
Sure.
It's cost prohibitive outside of like doing just Michigan or just the Midwest, and then that becomes hard to sell because it's regional and all that. But I am kind of doing that in the background just for my own fun,
Sure.
and collecting them, and eventually,
you got to do the RV trip.
Yes.
Like an RV ghost across the country trip. That would be amazing.
I'd have to save up forever. Plus, my girlfriend really likes. We're going to Bali next spring. She likes that a lot better than haunted houses.
And the RV going around.
Yeah, I don't blame her. Actually, she'd probably be more on the RV than me. I'm like, give me an Airbnb.
The travels. What was the most interesting one you traveled to?
The best one probably, and it's probably the longest story in there. The most, there was just so much that went on with it, and it would be familiar to some readers probably, certainly to ghost hunter reader type people. And it was Bobby Mackey's Music World in Kentucky, Wilder, Kentucky. So and I'm sure it was because it was on my mind. I was writing that chapter. We had planned a trip down to a music festival, Bourbon and Beyond, we go to every year now. And we were heading down that way to Louisville. And so I was writing the Kentucky entry, and I'd chosen Bobby Mackey's, and and most of the, I won't say most, a lot of the places that are more popular, they have ghost tours, and they have, they're selling that stuff, right? So, I talked to them. I'm like, hey man, I'd like to come down and get on a tour, and I'm coming through, at this time and whatever. And it just didn't mesh with their scheduled tours, but Laura from Gatekeepers Paranormal, who does the tours down there, great group. She was a lot of fun, very informative, and she's like, well, I can meet you there just like Monday afternoon or whatever on your way back to Michigan. I'm like, awesome. So I got a private tour, it was wonderful.
Oh,
we went
very
through,
cool.
And got the whole story. But that one, there was Ghost Encounters with Zach Baggins, if you're familiar. It was his very first
I think
show.
so.
He did that, which I just found because when I was researching. And the whole thing's like, it's all Satan and portal to hell, this well, and this whole like satanic panic 1980s sort of thing, which is what it got famous for. But when you do the research, it's like, that's all bullshit. like the place wasn't even a slaughterhouse. The slaughterhouse was over there. This place was a distillery, and it's so that was really cool to kind of like break that stuff. Now there's still things attached that make it creepy, and there was a guy that the whole thing kind of happened because one of the workers there, Carl Lawson, he was living in the upper apartment of the bar, and so, started with like, I'm seeing weird shit, at night, and so, telling the owner, Bobby Mackey, and the bar is it's like a scaled down Gillies from Urban Cowboy, right? It's got, and that's what it was modeled after. So this was this was in the 70s. Bobby had bought it. He was a up and coming country singer. Thought it would, hey, I got a place I can play every night, and I see what's going on with Gillies, and the Urban Cowboy thing was a big thing, and so it had the mechanical bull, it had the line dancing when we were there. There was about pool table, it was a big place. So he's living upstairs, and he kind of, he's like, oh, this is, I'm seeing things, and this happened, and something touched me, and blah, and Bobby's like, shut up. It's a country bar, shut up. I don't want to scare people, or whatever. And then it just escalated, and they had a friend who was a writer, a novelist, and he interviewed Carl, and he wrote a novel, and obviously, Shirley was embellishing things and probably prodding Carl around, who certainly had mental issues and whatever. He was an alcoholic, So I mean, then Carl's possessed, and they did a whole exorcism. You can find it on YouTube. It's fucking nuts. but it was just so much stuff, and then like there's all these different stories, and it all starts with an actual real story of a murder that happened in Cincinnati, and they dropped the body in Kentucky, and you can go back, there's the trials, you can find the transcripts and, all true story and whatever. So, there's always a nugget of truth, but then it's just to see how much it evolves, and, 80s with Tipper Gore and, all that kind of stuff, right? We're all worship the devil because we played Led Zeppelin backwards. And I don't know why I played Led Zeppelin backwards and what that was supposed to make me do, but anyway. So yeah, it was just crazy how much it went. But that was a lot of fun because there was so much to it. And also because I went there on the way down to Louisville. So we went it operates, I think, just Friday and Saturday actually now as a bar. And then the other days, kind of does its ghost tour thing or whatever. And
oh wow, it's so that big of a ghost tour thing then, huh?
Yeah, like it's bigger. A lot of days. When you go in there, you kind of see it. We pulled in, and it's like, oh, parking lot's kind of crowded, and but you go in, and the bar is so big that it's really not crowded, right? And it's just like a handful of college students line dancing, And they did break into a line dance of Achy Breaky Heart, so I thought maybe I was actually experiencing a ghostly moment, like I'd gone back today.
Right, really? Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
You went back in time. Billy Ray Cyrus was there. Huh?
Like they're like ghost line dancers. But yeah, so it was cool. I talked to the bartender and whatever. Hey, I'm writing a book. That's always a good line. So got some good stories. I went. There's a whole thing about the bathroom and how it's haunted. So I'm in there taking pictures and then having to explain to people that I'm not taking a picture. Are you taking a piss? And just move away from the urinal.
I know. They're like, but could you back up from the urinal then if this is really what's happening?
So, but yeah, it was the places. Probably hasn't been touched since 1970. So you go in and it's like you step back in time, and from the outside the places almost looks like it's fallen off the hill into the river behind it. Like it's just barely hanging on, both literally and figuratively. So well, that's but a lot of fun, mostly just because people were so inviting, to give me information, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things I like about ghost stories, and I think one of the functions and also just the fun of it is that you learn history from it.
Yeah.
So like we did I was born in Morgantown, but I had never been there, right? So we were born there. My dad was going to West Virginia University, he's going to WVU. I I don't even know if we lived there at the time. I was born there. We were mostly like in Canonsburg, which is right outside of Pittsburgh, like 20 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, tiny little town. And so I don't know. We might have been living with my grandparents, but I had never been. So this past summer, we were going out to visit family. And I was like, I've never been to Morgantown. All my relatives, whenever I would say that, we go, you have to go. It's so beautiful. You go to Cheat Lake. It's a really beautiful area. I'm like, you know what? This trip, I want to let's make a trip out. And it's 40 minutes away. Like it's nothing. You just cross there's all Western Pennsylvania. There's a little panhandle of West Virginia. You just go down a little and you're in Morgantown. So I'm like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, I want to do a ghost tour. Because I'm a nerd and I like to hear the ghost stories, but then you inevitably get to see the place. They tell you about the history of it, and you kind of walk, and they tell you about the building and the people that were there, that made that history. And so we're there. It was my first time there, and the tour guide, Danny, thank you for the tour. And so we do the tour. We're talking to him. Me and my wife are super talkative to people, so we make friends like wherever we go.
I don't know what that's like.
I know, and the surprise, I host this now, right? Like, I just get to make new friends every week. It's perfect for me. And so my parents that have been married 50 years as of this summer,
congratulations,
decide they wanted to they decide they want to renew their vows. And they asked me, because I'm ordained in the same church as Lady Gaga and Conan O'Brien.
What church is that?
I would have to look it up. It's an interweb church.
Okay, so there's the Universal Life Church, right? That's a popular one.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people have that one. I am also ordained.
Oh, are you? Do you have it? Okay, let's see it.
I'm going to grab this off the wall. This is my ordination. It's the Church of the Dude. It's actually based on the Big Lebowski. And these are all the people I've married over different things. So,
that is amazing. I love that. I've just done the two. I did it the first time.
Sorry, one quick last thing. This little act, they got divorced. It's the only one I've had. My record's pretty good though.
I'm super close still to this day with my niece Tori and her husband. I think I have dogs. If you hear growling, that's werewolves in the background. Special for Halloween. I brought werewolves. So
you brought werewolves in, man. The budget you have on this thing is much higher than I expected.
I know, this little YouTube show, werewolves. And it's all happening in the background. Just make believe, everybody. And so I got it originally to marry Tori and Kevin. And then my parents are like, oh, we want to renew our vows. So we want you to do it.
How great
and so then they tell me, we're not going to do it.
Oh,
I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, we're not going to do it. But we're all traveling out there, and we have this mini family reunion with whoever can kind of show up.
I thought you were going to say that they were like, actually, we're getting divorced.
We're getting divorced, son. I'm like,
what a swing! Nobody saw that coming.
I know. Well, I was just worried who I was going to live with. I'm like, do I go with you, Mom? Do I go with you, Dad? And they're like, you don't live here anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Come on, my wife and the kids are coming too.
And so we go, and so they spring it on us last minute. We go, okay, you know what? We are going to do it. And we're actually, we were staying, my other grandparents on my mom's side, my grandma, my grandfather passed away, is right on the border with Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and they're a half hour away. So we went over, visited them, and they were like, okay, we'll go by and visit with my parents and my grandparents real quick, and then we're going to head to Morgantown to do the ghost tour. So we stop in, literally just going to be an hour. It's going to be a fairly short trip. Going to say hi and just kind of give everyone hugs, and we're going to head out. We're like, okay. And we decided we're going to renew our vows. And so my wife is a planner. So she's like, oh my gosh. So she's on the phone. She's going to get a photographer for this, And I'm like, we're driving to Morgantown that 40 minutes. And I'm like, they still expect me to do it? Like, am I still why?
You forgot. I'm totally unprepared.
I'm like, I stopped thinking about this because they said they weren't doing it. And so she's like, oh, I'm like, I don't know. I guess we'll find out tomorrow when we go back, And so we're doing this ghost tour to swing it back around to the ghost tour. And it's a really fun one, actually. If anyone's in Morgantown, I would suggest doing it. I'll put a link. But you also get food. You get to stop at a pub and they give you some pub food, And so we stop, and my wife's looking at this up, and the guy, Danny, she's kind of talking to him. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm distracted. I'm just looking for a photographer. And it's like, I need it tomorrow. And it's on Sunday, Saturday to Sunday. So, and he's like, oh, I'm a photographer. So he shows up and then takes our pictures for the thing. So it ended up working out perfectly. I was like, oh, there was like a whole meaning to this. We got a photographer out of it, get to learn about Morgantown, which is as beautiful as people say. Cheat Lake's really wonderful too. But yeah, it was a long way to say it was fun learning the history and then just the weird circumstances of everything. Like you're there, like, oh, then people start talking to you. And you never know what happens, right? You just start talking to people, and
my same thing. My girlfriend and I we new friends every day. It's like I'll talk to anybody, and I'm a guy that has a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests. I'm a little bit like OCD and ADHD. So like I have 1,000 things that I'm like a fucking, like a Dutch swirl, right? But then I'm like, but I really want to know about it a lot.
Sure. So, well, that's how I am too. I know a lot about a little. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah,
what's that? Oh my gosh, I'm so interested in this for 5
exactly.
minutes.
I'm the same way. So I can always find it's nice because you can always find some common ground with somebody, like something that you have in common.
When you were doing the research for the book, what was there any cases that and I know you only traveled to certain ones, but was there any cases that just doing the research that were kind of the scariest, the most horrifying? Like,
probably, and I'm gonna cheat a little look here because I'll forget I want to get the names right. So
it's an open book quiz. It's fine.
Yes, thanks. Surprisingly, I didn't actually memorize the whole book.
Yeah, and so the audience knows I promised I wouldn't get into specifics, but then immediately I'm like, let's get into specifics.
So I'm trying to find. It's actually another popular one.
Show a picture here too while we're doing it. One of the things I just got it, like I mentioned this morning, but one of the really cool things about this one, because occasionally I do grab these, is there is so many. I mean, it is just littered with
ton of photos. Like,
and just illustrations, photos, and everything. I think it really sets it apart.
Yeah. So 966 Lindley Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So this one had like psychics that showed up too. It was a house, just a suburban basic house that a family lived in, and there was a whole thing with their daughter being possessed and things moving, and it was scary because there was a lot of like firsthand reporters and news people and stuff that would be in there. They're like, man, I was just sitting there, that chair tipped over, like it was fucking weird. And it was fairly recent, right, in 1970s. So a lot of the stories in the book are 1800s and Salem witch trials and Nellie Butler that was earlier in 1690, I think, first ghost story in America, right? So a lot of them are, way back, right? So you get this one, it's like, man, that's 1970s. Like, we knew shit, right? Like, we were just
right, exactly.
Like,
it's firsthand knowledge too.
The devil. It rains sideways. I don't know, whatever. Like by this time, we knew that stuff was crap. So like that many people having, and I think there was a lot of this that was actually pulled into the Poltergeist movie. So that was, they got a lot of it. There was a little girl, right? And so a lot of that pulled over. And there's a couple of Ed and Lorraine Warren who are kind of famous, paranormal investigators, from that time period. And they went there and it was, everything's, and later there's some, discoveries that, well, maybe this was kind of a hoax, but we really can't explain this, but we think this is what, so it's not, again, the skeptic in me is like, you're probably explaining it away. But that one, it kind of gave me creeps just reading the stories. So 1966 Lindley Street. Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Did you include the Amityville horror house?
I didn't.
I was just
not.
wondering if you researched it, because that's another one that's like, it's like, is it real? What's real? What's not?
Yeah.
Like, it
So a
gets
lot
conflated.
of them. So what I tried to do, and if you look kind of through the table of contents, I tried. So each state I went, either through word of mouth or just research online. Scariest places in Connecticut or whatever. That kind of stuff. Kind of got like 5, 6, legends or ghost stories that were interesting to me, right? And then started researching those and whittled them down as, okay, this is the one I'm going to use here. So I could probably write 3 more books pretty quickly, just on the ones that I didn't pick, right? But I tried to balance it a little bit. So like the very first story is the Birdcage Theater. I probably drank too much. I'm starting to slur my words.
It's okay. There's certain episodes where I'm like, I can't even listen to myself at the end. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is my gig. Like, I'm a lucky man.
So Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona. Most people are familiar, the whole Wyatt Earp thing and, OK Corral, right? So that's the first story in the book. And then I have one that's the White Lady in New York. That is a very local legend, So probably only the people that live in like those 3 towns in that area have ever heard of it, So I tried to balance it out with here's stuff that people know, the Winchester house in California, or those kinds of.
It's a really fun place.
Reasonably popular, but then other ones that were kind of in the middle. The people in that area probably know them. Like the Minnie Quay, the people in Forster or in Michigan have probably heard of it. And then some that nobody knows this except that guy that told me about.
Right. Yeah. This is the house down the street. Right. For the people that don't know, because Winchester Mystery House is always a fun one. I've gone a couple of times to it. You want to maybe give a little bit of a background on that? Yeah.
So the Winchester Mystery House, the widow of, I think it was the grandson. And I'm going by not looking at my book right now.
It's the Winchester rifles.
Right. Yeah. It was the heir to the widow. Yeah. So he dies. His wife has like this really, obviously has mental problems, but has this guilt complex about, all the guns that were used to kill people and things like that. Reaches out to, psychics and, has seances and all this. And they tell her, oh, well, if you keep building the house and working on the house and doing all these things, then, the spirits will be at peace or whatever. I don't know how that correlates, but okay. So she just weird, not even sensible construction, right? Like a stairway that just goes up into the ceiling and ends, a door that opens onto nothing, and like that kind of stuff. Just a constant building until she passed away. And then there's stories of, actual ghosts being there and people hearing things and seeing things. More interesting, I think, is just the mental, how she was trying to deal with that trauma in her life, right? That's how she dealt with it. And people were just like, yeah, go ahead, you have money, do whatever you want.
Sure. Well, and when you go, there's certain areas where I don't know how true this is or if it's just for the tour, right? Like certain things that they do, but there's half driven in nails because she was supposed to build 24/7. So she has so much money from the rifles. They're literally building 24/7. And the blueprints are from these seances, which I've heard there's architects there. They weren't going to let it, they weren't going to build something
collapse on somebody.
Right. But then
build
there's
this wall with no studs.
Exactly. But then there's nails that are half driven in. They're like, once she passed away, everyone just stopped. All the work stopped.
I would have thought they would have said, and I hadn't heard. I don't think I picked up on the half driven nail thing, and I haven't visited unfortunately yet. But I would have. My story for that would have been like somebody saw a ghost as they were hammering. Was like, I'm out.
Or like, I gotta get out of here. Yeah. It's a ghost. Never coming back. That nail will never be driven in. Maybe that was some of the other ones. Yeah, that's just the one I heard. Maybe there's others. There's other half-driven nails.
Now there is. Now there's a whole new story about how there was a ghost. That guy just ran out, and that nail's still halfway in. That's now canon.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fun though. Anyone that wants to go, it's in San Jose, California, which is Silicon Valley, which is crazy. Rich area now, but still a nice little place to visit. And the house is really neat, actually. Driving like even like just the mental process of it.
Right.
You feel that mental compartmentalization of like all of this like going on, and then just the craze of it.
Right.
Like it is
Probably
it
makes
is
you feel kind
interesting
of crazy
place.
yourself. Just
It does,
being in there. You know?
Yeah, but if you're tall, just be warned, you have to take like 3 stairs at a time, because I guess Sarah Winchester was really short, and the staircases, I mean, they're like that. I mean, yeah, and I'm like 6'1", and I'm like, I have to take like 6 stairs at a time just to try to like have some regular like balance here. So moving on from the ghost story bit. So I know you've written, you know, horror books and things too. And then you're clearly a big Stephen King fan. What's the best horror movie, and what's the best horror book?
All right. The best horror movie. Well, I'm gonna go with book first because I gotta think about movie for a second. So I would say the best short story collection. I'm gonna break these up a little bit. Best short story collection is Joe Hill's 20th Century Ghosts. Every story in that book's a winner. And Joe Hill happens to be Stephen King's son. I didn't know that when I started reading him. Found it out later.
Really? I didn't know that until you said it.
Yeah, excellent novelist in his own right. The best novel, I'm going to go with Paul Tremblay's A Cabin in the Woods, or A Cabin at the End of the World. So that was the M. Night Shyamalan made the movie based on that. He changed it significantly. It ruined it. It didn't ruin it. It was an okay movie. It is a fantastic book. I think Shyamalan pulled back from the hard stuff, and so I don't know if you've read the book or not, or seen the movie for that matter. Have you seen the movie? Dave Bautista.
No, I know what movie you're talking about. I didn't watch it though.
A great movie, and also I'm just gonna take a second to say Dave Bautista. What an actor! Who knew?
Really is, isn't he? Yeah.
He's really got some chops. Really good in that movie. So anyway, but the book was amazing. I mean, I probably, and I think I talked to Paul a little bit. I sort of know, like name dropping, but I don't know him that well, like an online acquaintance. I like said, man, this is the best book I think I've read in a decade, at least. Like it was just and not even just the plot or whatever, just the word structure, it was just really good. It makes me very jealous. I don't write that well.
Right, sure. I love those books actually. Like
so do I. It inspires me as a writer. It inspires me to try to be better. I need to figure out how to do that. So sure. Yeah, they crush you for like an afternoon, because it's like one of my favorite books. It's a classic, but it's Grapes of Wrath. And it's super slow. I've actually given it to all the kids, and I don't know that they get through it because the first 50 pages or so are a slog. But they set it up, and then after that, I just like mesmerized by the language and just the structure and the story and everything. And for an afternoon, I was crushed. And then I was like, game on, Steinbeck. Right.
Who knows? Like you have to have aspirational things, right? So it's like,
and that's the thing about like King. I mean, it's an easy go-to. It's everybody's favorite horror writer or whatever. But he's everybody's favorite horror writer because fucking really good. He's just really good. He writes in a way that is like an everyman sort. You don't feel like it's too much. You don't feel like it's too little. He makes you feel. He's great with dialogue. It's just. That's something you should aspire to.
Yeah, there is
even the book, and I'll say there's books that I think are shitty, and not even just Tommy knockers when he was high on cocaine, but he'll say it's shitty too, but he doesn't even, I don't even think he remembers writing that book. But like even some of the recent ones, like The Institute, I wasn't a big fan of. Like I just didn't care for it. Most of his more recent stuff I really like. But that one I didn't really care for. But the writing was fantastic.
Right.
It had holes in it that gave me a problem as a writer. And I know, rambling a bit. I know that I'm more critical now than I was, call it 20 years ago when I wasn't writing stories. Just because, right? You're writing and you're like, I could have wrote a better sentence than that. How'd this guy get published?
It does strip you a little bit of the joy of it.
A little bit.
You have to kind of turn it off. I try to turn off my and I've had friends that wanted me to critique their work and things. And when I was younger, I used to. I've done creative writing classes and all this, and I could do it. But I'm like, I can't do it for other people anymore. Like I can't. Like I know a lot of people that are authors, editors. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I can't. I have to be in author mode, and then when I read, that's read mode. I just turn it off. I maybe internalize all of it. I maybe have some thoughts, but I really try just to quiet it and just try to enjoy and take it for what it is, and not do it because it's rough.
So, as a writer yourself, do you have a particular first reader? Do you use a first reader? Do you write and have somebody reading while you're writing? Do you keep it all to yourself till the end? What's your process?
So I don't have any. I know it's funny. I had James Grady on the show. He did he wrote 6 Days of the Condor, which became the movie 3 Days of the Condor.
Yes.
And he was like, I have this ideal family in Nebraska. And he, like the city, like it's down to that. You mentioned your girlfriend, like she reads it. I don't.
So he has a family that reads, or he has a family that he's writing for? Like that's
it's a mythical family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, I want this to be accessible to everyone. Right. So this is just a family anywhere. Right. You just pick Nebraska. It could be anywhere. But I don't. You know what? I write it, and maybe I'm the audience. I just if I don't read it back after, like if I take a pause and I don't read it back and feel something from it, then I know it's not there.
Right.
So, but I did a lot of acting when I was younger. I had kids very young. I was 20 when I had my oldest daughter, Rhiannon, which is the name, one of the liquors. My head's blocking it today. And I have a little spider on it here, but that's my my older. She was named after Fleetwood Mac, the song.
That's my girlfriend's favorite, Stevie Nicks.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. My girlfriend's a teacher, a bartender, and a witch, by the way. Christen. I don't know if I've mentioned her name yet, so I'm just, for now on, when I say Christen, now you know.
Very good. Now we know. But yeah, so Rhiannon, which is like a witch name, right? It was a Celtic goddess, and she's Rhiannon Brooke, which is funny. I forgot this story, and then she mentioned her mom, because I'm not with her mom anymore. I was very young. We had Rhiannon, we had my daughter Cassidy, and with her mom Christy.
Similar situation. So
yeah, and so we didn't stay together, but. And, then I get remarried. My wife had a daughter, Michaela, and we have our son, William Wallace. So here we are with the family roots. Right. And so we named her Rhiannon Brooke because I kind of liked the witch/goddess. Because in Celtic, there's not a difference, right? Like the witches are goddesses. And then Brooke was like she was like the goddess of the stream. And I forgot. She came back later and said, Mom said you named me after Garth Brooks. And I thought about it. I was like, that's right. It was both. I did catch along to what was happening, but then also it was like, no, I really liked Garth Brooks. It was just the early 90s.
I was a huge Garth Brooks fan. I listened to his first album, like before he was popular. like exactly. Cowboy Bill. I love the Cowboy Bill song.
Cowboy Bill's a great song.
Nobody knows that song.
Oh, I know. I got when they re-released everything at Walmart, at every CD, even though I had every one, I bought it again. Too.
I got it too. Yeah. So my oldest son is named Aaron. I wanted to name him Elvis. He's a big Elvis fan.
Oh,
so
sure.
My ex wouldn't go for it. So my workaround was Aaron. So it's the middle name, right? And so like he knows he's named after Elvis, but just I couldn't name Elvis. Which my argument for naming a child Elvis, by the way, is like, do you know any Elvis that's not famous? Right? There's Elvis.
This is true.
There's Elvis Costello. There's Elvis Presley. Right. I can't name you another Elvis. Every Elvis I know is famous. So I mean, if you name a kid Elvis, this
is true. And you don't meet it's not Elvis like Costello, randomly in life. You meet a lot. I don't know if you did, but I mean, really though, I can't remember a single Elvis I've ever met. Yeah. Right? I just know the famous ones. So clearly you're right.
Bears out.
Stole like his chance in Spain.
So he's Aaron, and then Connor was named for, and I also whatever the meaning of Aaron was, I looked that up and the whole.
Sure.
You know,
I did too. Yeah.
Same thing with Connor, is my other son, and I'm Polish and Irish mostly. So both of them are named Michael. Aaron was named Michael, his middle name Michael. After me, and then he picked Connor's name and said, I wanted it to be the same as mine. I'm like, all right.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's cute. That's nice. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, getting to the reader. So they say, write the stories that you want to read. So I literally do. I write it. I have to be all in. Yeah. And then I have to feel something as I go.
I'm obviously, if I don't like it, it's not working. If I'm not surprised, if I'm not whatever, excited about it. But how it kind of happened for me, I had sort of after Above the Clouds and some short stories and whatever, I had some start and stops. I kind of explained with Angel of Death, and I probably hadn't written anything for 6 months or something. And I, first in my career, there was a lot of those online prompts, get on and do a flash fiction thing, on Twitter or whatever, So I used to do that stuff, and oh, you want a badge, or whatever that was, right? So, that was fun for 10 minutes. And actually, I had a whole collection of those short, under 500 word things or whatever, that I'll probably do something with eventually. But out of the blue, I got an email from somebody that was like, "Hey, we haven't seen you write anything lately. We've been kind of waiting, blah, blah, blah." And it was like somebody lived in South Carolina, whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck? I can't believe somebody read my somebody actually paid any attention to me whatsoever. So I was like, well, that's awesome, And so I started writing. I'm like, all right, well, somebody wants to read something. So I started writing, and I would send her every 2 or 3 chapters as I was writing it. And she'd read it, and she'd, oh my God, I can't wait till what's next, blah, blah. And that was so encouraging, right? Somebody just waiting on it. Somebody, you're feeding somebody the page, it was so exciting. I was like, man, this is great. And I breezed through that book. I mean, I was, 3 months, I probably wrote that book. It was done, polished, great, whatever. So then as I went on, and unfortunately I met my girlfriend who was an English teacher, and it was like, now I can feed it to her. And it's such a lonely process, right? Especially if you're working on a novel, a short story, whatever, it takes you a week or something, or, but a novel, oh my God, I'm working on this thing for a year, or whatever, whatever it is, years maybe.
Right.
And it's like, I spent all this time on it. I have no idea if anybody but me is going to like this thing. So it's encouraging that at least one other person thinks it's not shit. So,
right.
Let's just get me there. That's fine, and then I can go on.
Yeah. It is the part of being an author is that either you need to have that support system, or you have to be just utterly incorrigible. And I'm there. I'm just utterly incorrigible. I've been working on. So the book I'm working on right now end up being 2, and maybe maybe a publisher wants it to even be even more books, but it's called Pirates of Appalachia, and it's set after this event called the Trumpocalypse, in which America, the world, and loosely related to Trump, but more related to just
sort of Handmaid's Tale, sort of kind of conservative craziness.
Well, no, not even conservative craziness, just craziness, right?
Okay.
Everyone's just like, it's my team, right? We're very tribal with politics now.
Fair. Yeah.
And so there's the war of the 4 domains, which is actually the domains are Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, the 4 big tech companies are the domains. And so there's this thing that happens, the country breaks down, and then there's just mega cities, and Pittsburgh's one of them. That's why it's Pirates of Appalachia. It's the biggest. It's the first. There was Pixit, where they like Brexit, where they split off of the country, and then the country went to hell. And then little West Virginia, where I'm from, right, is just rural nothingness.
Right.
And some bootleggers from there, because there's nice bootlegging history, decide they're going to sail down the Ohio and sack the city of Pittsburgh. And thus, my epic absurdist satire is born. And I'm at I'm going to probably hit 300,000 words with it.
Right.
And I shared a little on my website, like the prologue and the first chapter. I think I've shared on there.
Okay.
But otherwise, it is just me and my madness and having to go on this. I've been on it for like more than 10 years, and I have written some things in between, and some of my books have released in between. And I even wrote one in between, but it's you just have to keep going. And there's times where I'm like, what in the world am I freaking doing?
Yeah, Angel of Death, that was probably a 10-year process before it actually got out somewhere, because it was start, stop, figure out what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny because it's very, I inject a fair bit of sarcasm and humor into my work.
Sure.
It's just fun, like that's just,
absolutely.
That's how I am, I guess. This one it would be kind of similar to where you're at. So the first 2 books, because it was really kind of one book to be in, are very they kind of make fun of the whole liberal, like the extra liberal thing. Now I'm liberal. I'm left, as most artists are. But
that's just very true.
But actually, for instance, you can't say, so there's zombies, but I call it a mashup between Jason Bourne and like The Walking Dead, right? So it's more of a spy thriller thing than anything else.
Okay.
And it's post-zombie apocalypse, because at this point the zombies have mutated enough that they're interacting with humans, right? So they're just like, they're great long-haul truckers because they don't have to sleep, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, and there's bars that cater to them, and just serve like raw meat so they don't have to eat people, and that, that kind of thing. And then if there's any rogue ones, the rancid group comes and gets them and takes them away, and there's a whole whatever. And you can't say the Z word, right? You don't say that anymore. You don't say the Z
very
word.
good.
They're undead Americans, or finite lifespan challenged individuals, that kind of thing, right? So, but then going forward, after these 2 books, it gets more into where you have this rise of this anti-zombie sort of guy, like he's, kind of the Trump sort of guy, right? Who's, these zombies are going to take all your jobs, or whatever. Right.
Well, of course, because they don't have to sleep. I mean, the hours
exactly. You don't got to pay them harder than nothing. But that one, so that's like, it's very similar along those kind of, making fun of the politics on both sides of the spectrum,
Sure.
That one, I love to tell the story about how if you don't mind, how I started writing that one. I was driving to dinner one night. I went past a cemetery on a fairly busy road, right? Fence on the thing. And there was a sign on the fence. It was like one of those used car signs, right? Like the plastic, with the little holes in it and whatever. And it was like, get your grave plot today, or whatever. It was like so weird. So like, that's fucking weird. So about, 2 minutes down the road, I'm like, what if they were like used grave plots? Like, how funny would that be?
Right. Well, and there's histories of that, right?
Right. So then I'm like,
used grave plots.
That developed into, okay, well, if they're used, it's because somebody rose from the dead and they don't need it anymore. And there's a whole thing about how those graveyards work and stuff in the book, and how, zombies come out and they get a little bit of cash. So, they can get some new clothes, maybe a haircut, get some makeup, get out into the world. And then the guy that's kind of the big guy, the big zombie guy, he owns all these places, and he's like, if you get buried here, that guy came back, so you'll probably come back too.
Exactly.
Not everybody comes back. It's very hit and miss.
Right?
Anyway.
Well, it's like those people that have like a first marriage or something, right? And then you come back and then you get the second family and the younger wife or the younger husband, whatever.
Start all over.
We need to transition to our shots portion of the program. And so anyone watching, every question, we're taking shots.
Wait, I need to.
Shots are optional.
I've gone this far.
So starting, who you got? Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees?
Jason.
Jason?
He's just unstoppable, right? It's just, I like that Freddy works in dreams and whatnot, but it's just the whole Michael Myers, Jason, they're just that whole zombie sort of thing.
And he's impossibly fast, because you can be sprinting And he walks behind you and catches you every single time.
Right. No idea how he moves that quickly. He's like he's on one of those, like, I think he walks on one of those airport treadmills, and everybody else is walking on the normal thing, and he's like, 2 steps, this is your 4 steps.
They're stumbling with their carry-on, and he's just walking and like catches them every time. What's your biggest pet peeve?
People that don't drive faster than me in the left-hand lane.
Is Michigan the left lane is just a passing lane state?
Yes, it's supposed to be, right? And our speed limits are up to 75 miles an hour, depending on where you're at. And of course, I'm doing 90. And I don't care if I'm speeding. Get out of my way, because that lane is for passing. I don't care if you're doing over the speed limit. If I'm still doing faster than you, you got to get the out.
Very good. That's an important distinction, because like California is not. So it's just people on the left lane, and they think I go 70 because that's the thing. But I know Pittsburgh, West Virginia, where we just were, it's a passing lane. So you should only be passing there and getting over. So when we were there, at one point there was a truck there, and just next to another truck that he thought he was going to pass at some point in history, and didn't for like 10 miles. And we're like,
just
okay, come on,
everybody.
this is ridiculous. Okay, next one. If a ghost told you to name this, and this question's coming from, I think this is my son or this is Michaela. I asked them for some questions for the show. So this is coming directly from the fam here. If a ghost told you to name your unborn child Snuffleupagus, would you?
A ghost told me to? I probably would.
Yeah. The sensible thing to do, because you don't know.
I might not call him Snuffleupagus all the time, but I would name him.
Call him Snuffy.
Right. You're talking about the name of your I'm going to interject really quick. I used to tease my ex that I wanted to name my kid something Latin, like Dionocles or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I would always say I want to name him Testicles. It would take her a minute, but anyway.
Sounds very Latin. I mean, that's that's an official title. That guy's going to conquer. What's the most haunted state?
Probably. Oh man, that's a tough one. It's definitely New England. Probably Massachusetts. Just the history.
Sure.
I would have went with Maine, which that's where the very first ghost story comes from, and also the home of Stephen King. Okay, but
very good.
I just don't feel like they're as haunted. They have nicer trees and leaves and stuff. I feel like it's not as creepy enough.
Yeah, sure. Are all dolls haunted, or is it just mine?
It's just yours, and a few other ones. Not all dolls though, but yours is definitely haunted.
Right. The sad part is when I originally wrote that down, I meant to have one of my granddaughters, because we now have 2 grandkids that further the family tree here. Ellie, who lives with us, she has this doll, and it's never done anything, but I don't trust it. Like,
you can usually tell which dolls are haunted. They have a look about them, something in their eyes, for sure.
Right.
I will tell you that every lighthouse is haunted. Every former insane asylum is haunted. Pretty much every hospital, every prison, most schools. It's just the way it is.
Right. Very good. Stranger Things. Do you watch the show?
Loved it.
Okay. How does it end?
Man, because there's one more season, right?
There's one more season coming up. Yeah.
Ooh, I'd like to see a return of my Metallica man. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be cool. I think, I don't know, Elle just gets powerful enough to close off the upside down.
Sure.
That's all I can
Maybe.
think of. Or it ends with, kind of just leaves you out there. I don't mind those endings where it's like, we didn't die, but we might die tomorrow.
Right, you leave it a little open-ended. So I always wonder, because then they mentioned with what's that guy's name, Vecna, that he takes everything you are. And so if he took everything Max is, everything she is still out there somewhere. And does she get to now fight him from like within him? And then that way the character sticks around, because they didn't like completely kill her off.
There's definitely got to be a battle in that like creepy, watery, whatever place that is, right? Something has to happen there.
Yeah, that black water place. Yeah.
Where the whatever thing that doesn't die or is everything or whatever. I don't.
Yeah, right.
We
did
Netflix
last
is
year.
Slow. I don't know how.
I know. And all these strikes don't.
I gotta go back. I always have to go back and watch like the last 3 episodes of whatever it was because it's like that's been like a year and a half.
Right. Well, and all the kids are like 40 now. I think the kids are now aged us. You know, they're like,
it probably ends with them all in the old folks' home.
Last year we bought a little mannequin, like a child-sized mannequin, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do a Max decoration." And like we bought the costume of Max and put it on her, like when she's up in the air. There's those scenes where like she's there, and so we got the red wig, the little jacket she's wearing, like baby blue 80s jacket, those little sneakers, and then the headphones, and then we got blood and made it leaking from her eyes.
Oh man.
And put it up on our old dying tree, which coincidentally this week just fell over. So our old dying tree is now the tree falling over in our yard that my wife wants to leave for Halloween. So it's now our Halloween decoration.
You might as well at least leave it for the month. I'm on board with that.
Right. But after I did it, I left Max around the house to try to scare my kids. Successfully, very often, I might add. I leave it. My wife was the only one that was like, "Why do you just leave that stupid doll around? I know you're gonna leave her there. I'm not scared." At least she says that. I think. She was afraid.
I once got a letter about my Halloween decorations. Somebody complaining that they were too intense and they couldn't walk their kids past my house. To which I responded with a letter that I posted outside with floodlights on it, which had a whole thing about how like psychology and kids being scared of things, and they might be scared of a Chuck E. Cheese rat, whatever. And if you come let them poke the dead bodies, they won't be afraid of it. But yeah, it was pretty. I used to go a little overboard, probably.
Very good. I love that. Yeah. But we did it. So I had that, and at one point, I finally put her out in the garage before I was going to hang her up the next day. And I walk out there to do something, and I'm not thinking about it. And sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I thought there's a kid there," and like I'm just like, "What is happening?" I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm the idiot now." Which is almost all my stories almost end that way. So.
Right.
Awesome. So before we get to the reading of the book, I did want to ask 2 questions. I'll start with the first. What is it you think that like just ghost stories, even horror stories, like just in general, like why do people gravitate to them? But what is it about us as humans that we're so intrigued by?
I think I mean most ghost stories, most horror stories end with the hero, like any other story. You have your hero's journey in there and whatever, right? So you read them, you can kind of allay your own fears. Somebody conquered that, whatever. And there's just a weird sort of joy, some sort of primitive reaction to being scared, which was certainly helpful. When things growled in the dark that would eat us. That's probably just a holdover, and it's just another emotion that gets tapped into like anything else. I like watching a comedy just as much as I like being scared, just as much as I like an action show or whatever, just something to get your heart rate up and get those endorphins going.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. I also think there's that they say like, oh, the big question is, are we alone? Right. But I don't think most of us actually, I don't. And I like things like this. I don't actually think about, are we the only like species in the universe much,
Right.
And I probably think about it more than most people, I love watching things about that, but I think the human question really is, does some part of us persist?
Right, for sure.
Is there a soul? Is there what happens after this? Do we get reincarnated and things? So I think we're endlessly fascinated by that prospect.
I'm on the page, of it just kind of ends, right? Like, because I don't know any better, I would love to find out different, right? Like that I, end up in some other guy. And, the idea of reincarnation or, like I said, I believe in energy. So maybe, that energy goes into some other life form or whatever, that I'm not aware of. And, some other time, I'm some other person who's having this, wondering if I'm going to exist again, whatever. But at the end, I figure I didn't, like most philosophers that don't believe in an afterlife or whatever would say, they don't they don't know what happened before they were born, so they're not really concerned about what happens after.
Sure.
I'm not going to know the difference.
Right,
But
right,
yeah,
sure.
I would agree that search, that hope that there's something else. I hope there's something else. I just have no reason to believe there is.
Sure.
But that hope, yeah, that's probably, I would say that certainly draws people to ghost stories. I don't know about horror necessarily, but ghost stories and
Yeah, for sure. That's a good distinction. When I was younger, I thought about that. Like, so I was 20, I have my first daughter. Kind of a mess. Yeah, I don't know that I'm such not a mess now. Certainly,
but probably less of a mess than you were, call it 30 years ago. I'm taking a stab, but I don't know.
Right. 25.
Yeah, it was 30 for me, so I was trying to make myself feel better.
Years, so yeah, it's okay.
Thanks for calling me old, man. Appreciate it.
Well, you could have said 20. I don't know. But I because the fear of losing my kids really made me very introspective of it. Because I was very convinced, and sometimes still am, that like my absent-mindedness will like end up killing the people I love, right? It's going to be like some just like never intentional, but it'll be some dumbass thing I do, and now everyone's like died, right? And but that was a very like serious fear, when I was younger, like that kept me up very, very late at night, and I realized like, okay, I need to come to terms with life, even if this is the final moments, right. And so I thought about that a lot. There was a lot of introspective, very young introspective. Like a lot of people get very old before they start thinking about these things. But I was very into it, and energy, like you mentioned, was one of the things that I really thought about. Was that, you know what, even if this is it, and I die, my body goes to the maggots and the worms. There's still honor in that. There's still a beauty in that. That those things are now they're feeding off of me. I have fed off the world all this time, and now I'm giving back. This world's going to feed off of me, and then there's the whole cycle that goes.
The mushrooms. We're all feeding the mushrooms, and the mushrooms are going to take over. I hate mushrooms. The mushrooms are going to take over. I'm committed. Eventually, that's it. We're all done. And then what was the Netflix strip? Was it Netflix that was just out? The Last of Us. Have you watched it?
Right.
Yeah, that's all mushroom things. I'm like, I knew it. That's
right.
That's
it was based on a video game.
Yeah.
Really
I would agree. I agree that whole circle of life thing, right? That if that's the minimum, that's okay.
Right. And then once I got to that, I was like, okay, now I can be open to other things. But even if it's just a circle, and now I give back to it, then that's what it is. I think there's
the whole
beyond that too.
Fear of your child. I think everybody has, especially I had kids pretty young too. 24. My oldest was born. And Above the Clouds. Well, pitch that one earlier. That one is very much deals with a father and his son and dealing with death and how that psychologically affects people and whatever, like the whole. So yeah, I understand exactly that feeling. And probably I think it's probably pretty universal, right? But
I'm sure, especially anyone with a kid. I mean, any of the parents out there are getting us, or expecting parents, right? Like they're
like,
there.
Absolutely, because it's the worst thing you can think of, right? Like it's like we do that to ourselves. We think, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could lose my kid, or whatever. So,
because I've always been fairly comfortable with losing myself.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
sounds weird, but I feel
like I'm on borrowed time right now. Like I've made it this far. That's pretty good.
Exactly.
Now I'm convinced now that I'm immortal, because as the record shows, I just keep waking up every day. So I have no reason to believe that's going to stop.
Very good. Good to know.
We'll
do this show again in 500 years. We'll see how long our hair is by then. It'll be perfect. Generally, what do you think makes a good ghost story?
I think revenge is always good. For the kind of the driver, or lost love. Those are popular. The bride, the white woman, right? Sure. Like everybody's got a white woman story. I could have wrote 50 white woman stories if I really wanted to, right? Because it's I love my husband died and I killed myself. It's like those women really liked Nobody would kill themselves if I died. I'm certain.
I'm with you.
But so revenge or love, that good driver of why the ghost is there. You need that. And then I think what makes a really good ghost story is the redemption. The ghosts, either, and that might not be a good for the living person, depends on the ghost, right? And what the wrong was and why they're a ghost, are they out for revenge or whatever? And sometimes I'm like, hey, ghost, like,
I hope you win, ghost.
I was an asshole, get it. So I think that, and that with any story, like a good driving, motivation, and then and everybody loves a good redemption story. Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense. So would you mind then reading us one of the stories from your book?
I will. Now that I'm half in the bag, let's see how it goes. I'm going to adjust my lighting. I'm going to read the Minnie Quay. So I'm going to read the beginning of the Minnie Quay story. So This is, you'll see it. This will probably take about 5 minutes. So this story is from Forster, Michigan, which is a town. If you're from Michigan, you tell everybody where you live with your hand. So it's a town right about there. And I have a lot of family there. I have a family that has farmed there for over 100 years. We have property up there. Well, my brothers, myself, my parents live up there now. My dad passed, but my mom's still up there. It's a weekend kind of, place to go, a couple hours north of Detroit. And this ghost story has been around forever and reasonably popular with the people in Michigan, been investigated a little bit and whatnot. So here we go. All right. Ruth's legs were getting tired, and it was still a long way back to the bonfire. She could see the flicker of the flames from here, but that was about it. When Bobby suggested to walk along the beach, she knew that he had more than that in mind, but a little necking was okay with Ruth. She wasn't some kind of prude. The walk was nice. She and Bobby had only been going steady for a couple of weeks, so they still enjoyed a lot of the fun small talk that comes with new relationships. Who's your favorite band? What's your family like? That kind of stuff. They'd walked farther than she realized, the moon reflecting off the water of Lake Huron, soft waves lapping at their feet, holding hands and talking. They'd walked past the old pier and were nearly to Forster Park by the time they'd picked a spot to stop and sit a while. That was nice, too, at least until Bobby had decided to get a little more handsy than Ruth was ready for. It would have been fine if he'd just stopped when she asked him to. Boys get excited, after all. But when he'd continued to untie the top of her swimsuit for the third time, Ruth gave him a slap to let him know she was serious. He'd stormed off, and that was why Ruth was now trudging through the sand by herself in the middle of the night. The walk back always seems longer, she thought, especially when you're happy one way and mad the other. Ruth was sad as well as angry. She liked Bobby. She thought he was different from the other boys in this rural community. Ruth wrapped her arms around herself. It was getting chilly, and she hadn't bothered to grab a jacket when they had left the bonfire. The storm was coming in, and the weather was turning quickly. Ahead of her, she saw a figure in the moonlight, maybe 50 yards away. Had she caught up to Bobby? Was it someone else from the bonfire? She yelled, "Hey!" but the figure didn't seem to hear. Probably not surprising. The wind had really picked up, and the waves from the Great Lake were coming in with increasing force. They'd need to clear out soon. Ruth quickened her pace. The figure was moving away from her toward the bonfire. It had to be Bobby. "Hey!" she yelled again. This time the figure stopped. But after just a moment, it started moving again. This time down the beach toward the water. What the? Ruth wondered. By the time Ruth reached the spot where the person had turned and gone into the lake, at the spot where the remnants of the old pier remained, the figure was well out into the water. Too far out, it seemed to Ruth, for the figure to be anything more than a head bobbing among the waves, but she could see the person's whole body as if she was standing on the water. And now she was close enough to make out some details. It was definitely a female. Long hair, the curves of a young woman, a long dress. The figure suddenly seemed to glow a pale white, as if she'd absorbed the moonlight and was emanating from within her. Ruth was mesmerized. The figure raised her arm and beckoned for Ruth to come toward her. The water of Lake Huron never truly gets warm, but it was particularly chilly on this late summer evening. Ruth didn't notice. She didn't notice much of anything. Ruth was barely aware of the water reaching her waist. She gave little thought to the foolishness of her actions. She was entirely focused now on the figure. It was a girl, perhaps Ruth's age, maybe a few years younger. The dress she wore seemed dated, like one that one of the girls in the nearby Amish community might wear. The girl's long hair was tied back with a ribbon. What did she want? What was she in the water? Was she standing on a rock, an old piling remaining from the pier? As the water reached Ruth's chest, a feeling of warmth rushed over her, even though the cold lake water should have had her shivering. She felt comfort, peace. She had a sense that she needed to reach the girl, an inkling that everything would be just fine if she did. She could see the girl much more clearly now, smiling back at her, still beckoning for Ruth to come forward. Just as the water reached her shoulders, Ruth heard a voice from the beach yelling her name. Ruth! Ruth, where are you? The girl in the water, 30 feet or so from where she was now, was she moving farther into the lake? Was smiling at her. But as the shouts from the shore continued, the smile fell, and she appeared sullen. Ruth felt an immense sadness. The glow of the girl seemed to fade. Ruth was suddenly aware of the cold water. As if on cue, a wave covered her face, causing her to choke and spit out the cold water. When she recovered, the girl in the lake was gone. Ruth turned in circles looking for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Ruth's body suddenly ached from the chill of the lake. Her limbs felt weak. Barely feeling like her own, it was difficult to move. Ruth, she heard from the beach. She tried to call back, but now her teeth were chattering. Her chest felt tight. With effort, she began trudging back toward the safety of the shore. She stumbled more than once, her head dipping below the waves, the cold water now a shock to her system. On her hands and knees, crawling painfully over the rocks in the shallows, Ruth made it to the beach, rolling onto her back and summoning what strength remained to call out for help. Ruth's friend Louise had been the one calling for her. When Bobby showed up back at the bonfire without Ruth, Louise had gone looking for her. She heard Ruth's cry for help, and she ran to her friend, helping Ruth up and wrapping her in her own jacket around her drenched girl's shoulders. Louise helped her friend back to the bonfire. Once Ruth was able to warm up and recover, Louise asked her what she had been thinking. Was she trying to kill herself? Why would she wade out far in the lake, especially by herself? When Ruth explained seeing the figure and the unshakable urge to follow her into the lake, Louise's face drained of color. Ruth knew what her friend was thinking, even before she said it. And as she sat by the fire, getting the feeling back in her extremities, Ruth had the same thought. Do you think it was Minnie Quay? And that's where we'll stop.
Very good. That's a lovely ghost story there. Nice. I love the description with it too. I really like that.
So Ruth is my mom. The story's mildly embellished, but yes.
Very good. And that son of a bitch, Bobby. Or was it Bobby? Or did I just lose the name?
It was Bobby.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Very good. Awesome. So I like to say it's last call.
Okay.
You don't have to go, but you'll have to restart the video. The final question I love to ask everyone here is just for anyone watching, what is maybe one small thing they can do tomorrow to make their life just a little bit better?
All right. I have two.
Okay.
One is pretty simple. One is a little deeper. The first would be how to make a great hard-boiled egg. So everybody loves a good hard-boiled egg. Cold water. Start with cold water. Eggs in. Bring the water to a boil. Turn it off. That's important. Most people let it keep boiling. Wrong. You get the green ring of death around your yolk. Awful.
Okay.
So boiling. Turn it off. Sit for 8 minutes. Put your eggs in an ice bath. Perfect. They'll peel easily. No green ring of death. That's
okay. Very good.
Now, the good advice otherwise, a little more deep. There's many quotes. You mentioned William Wallace, and I think of the quote for that movie. It was every man dies, but not every man truly lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Can you do that with a Scottish
quote.
Accent, though?
Yes. I have been to Ireland, but not to Scottish. Scottish, not to Scottish.
Right.
So my favorite quote is success is loving life and daring to live it. That's by Maya Angelou. And I try to operate on that. So it helps that I believe that this may be all I got, right? As far as I know, this is it. So make the most of it. And every day, certainly I get frustrated by something. I get mad by something. Something pisses me off, and I'm an asshole or whatever. But I try really, really hard to recognize when I do that, dial that back and say, look for the good thing that happened. Look for the good today, right? Look for the happiness, and always take the chance. That would be my biggest thing. Always go for it. It'll probably suck sometimes. You'll probably make the wrong choice. It'll be a mistake. You'll lose money. You'll whatever, right? But you'll have the experience, if nothing else.
Right.
And that's all we have. It's all life's made up of is experiences. So take them while you can.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's lovely. I think it's important too, because if you stop looking at it like failure and just look at it as a chance you took.
Right.
And it's just a chance. So a chance doesn't mean success or failure, right? Like there's mostly like, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe some third thing happens you don't think of, but
usually somewhere in the
put
middle.
yourself out there. Yeah.
You
Put yourself out there as much as you can.
I mentioned we had moved to Australia. We went for a year. The job, of course, as usual, not everything it was cracked up to be, but I met the greatest people that I still talk to, had great times over, had great adventure. I became a writer because of it. Just all these things happened. It cost me a lot of money in the end, like not like I wasn't broke, but it was it was a financial setback, but it was well worth it for my experience, for the kids' experience, my ex-wife's experience, whatever, and for what came of it. I could just go, it cost me like 10 grand to, do that fucking adventure, I'd be like, look at all the shit that happened because of it, so.
Right. Awesome. And so if people do want to learn more about you, I know you mentioned the website, and we can include the link with the show and everything here.
www.Kozlowski.com.
Very good. Any other ways they can connect with you?
They can certainly find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, probably LinkedIn. Michael Kozlowski, M.A. Kozlowski. Trying to think of my different handles. If you go to my website, though, you'll find all the links to those social medias. Sure. That's the easiest way to do it. If you search my name, you'll probably be able to tell from the picture that it's me. Probably be some 80s picture from, the Breakfast Club or something. That is on my website. Very
good. Which is, I think, when we started this meeting before the video came on, it was the Breakfast Club, and I was like, I like this guy already. Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, for coming on. It was
thank
lovely.
You. It was a blast. I had a great time.
Yeah, I did too. And cheers, my friend, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Hi, I'm Janae from mahalo.com, and tonight we're fixing a stiff one.
Janae!
Just kidding, I'm Kristen from Detroit, and tonight we're fixing a Michigan Manhattan. So, we are going to start with 1 ounce of Long Road Michigan cherry liqueur. We're using Woodford. You can use whatever bourbon you prefer. 2 ounces of that. And then a couple dashes of cherry bitters. Even more than a couple. All right. Stir it. Mix it up. Chill it down a little bit. Strain it into our rocks glass, or a highball if you prefer. More ice. Garnishing with some Michigan Peninsula fancy cherries. And a little bit of lemon. You're going to express over the drink and then hit the edges. Mike's Manhattan.